I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey guys, welcome to the Outlander After Show on AfterBuzz TV. We're talking season 5, episode 11, Journey Cake, the penultimate episode. I'm Adrienne Snow, and we have as well Angel Taylor. See if I can do this right, and everyone thinks it's cool. And then we have Rachel Goodman.
Hey everyone.
And Lee Broadway.
Hello everyone. Good evening.
All right, so this is the penultimate episode. Let's just go in with first thoughts.
My first thought was this is going to be a very epic ending to season 5. I think it's going to go out with fires, and the way it started was just, man, it was gruesome.
All right, Rachel?
So what I'm really happy about is that they pulled in a lot of book 6 into this, and I'm so excited to do the page to screen tonight because there's so much to talk about. But I will say, in terms of the show, I love that Diana wrote this episode. I was really excited for it. I thought she did a wonderful job, and I also appreciated that they ended this on a cliffhanger and that we had all of the scenes with Brianna saying goodbye to her parents, especially the scene we got between her and Jaimie. I loved it, and such a callback to, even season 3 really is where I felt like we were calling back the most to.
Yeah, especially with Jaimie's son.
Yeah.
Lee, what were your first thoughts about it?
I have a lot of curiosity about where Roger, Bree, and Jimmy actually ended up when they went through the stones. And so that was very intriguing for me. Of course, as Rachel said, there's a lot of cliffhangers, and that certainly was one component of the show this evening. And I'm just really interested to know who the Committee of Safety is, and what are their goals, and who's formed this particular committee. It seems that there are people running around burning homes and taking lives, and I'm wondering if they have anything to do with this particular situation.
Yes, yeah. Well, hopefully we'll dig into that a little bit more next episode. Overall, I like this episode. It was a bit slower paced, but that's also probably because they're kind of, hyping up for next episode, or building up to the next episode, I should say. And as well, sorry, my cat is staring at me intensely. As well, I really did. I kind of knew that something bad was going to happen the moment they gave us a sex scene, but we'll get there. So let's go ahead into just with some of the smaller storylines of this episode, and talk about Ulysses, who is on the run because essentially, it's slave times. You can't just be out here killing white people if you're Black, ever, but especially you should never kill anyone, is what I'm trying to say. But especially during that current time. How do we feel about him being on the run and being helped by Claire and Jaimie and John Gray?
Well, I mean, as you said, the reality is back then, if you killed a white man, you were a Black man. It doesn't really matter, what your motive may have been at the time. He obviously had to make some changes in his lifestyle. He was so loyal to Aunt Jocasta, and Jaimie wanted to make sure that he was protected. So, he came up with a plan to remove him from the Carolinas and have him go overseas to London. So I think that was a good call.
Angel?
Definitely a good call because, Gerald Forbes was a lawyer. Like, his status in the community was so high up, no matter what Aunt Jocasta said, nothing would have made that situation right. So he would have definitely hung by a tree if he stayed. So I'm glad that, Lord Gray saves the day again. And I thought it was kind of cool to see a picture, even though we didn't get to see the actual character this time, to see the picture of Jaimie's son, as he's growing up, and to tell Bree about him before she left. That was important. And I don't think it would have came up if Lord Gray didn't bring the picture. So that was really cool. Like Rachel was saying, it was a callback to season 3. And I feel like we need more callbacks like that, because sometimes we forget as we go along, season by season, we forget some of this stuff because I mean, it's been years invested in it. So it's really good to do callbacks as they did tonight.
Rachel?
Yeah, I loved that. Speaking of the callbacks, when Jaimie was telling Brianna about Hellwater and just everything we got with the word jungle in general, and I loved that it is a callback to Hellwater, and it's a callback to what Jaimie went through, what he went through, and how he ended up completing his child. I really that we got that, and that we got so we got to that Brianna got to find out about William too. I loved all of that. We're not really one of the things I love about Outlander so much is that things are always building on what we've already seen. I just, really quickly, I am watching the chat. So just a quick shout out to Amy A, Elizabeth Brown, Nina Murphy, Gracie and Ryan, and Hubby Joe and Robin O'Neill. And I'll give more shout outs later. Oh, and Nina Murphy, if I didn't.
Hey guys.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, it was, sorry, I was kind of struggling to hear you there a bit, Rachel, so I don't know quite what everything you said, but I know for me, I did like, it was nice to see them bring it back full circle, to have John there and to comment on William, and for Bree as well to discover she has a brother before she leaves, and for us to kind of get a reminder of like how much time has passed by the picture painting of William, and even just the fact that Jimmy is now, you know, walking and talking, and so even in I think the past 2 or 3 episodes, we've probably at least advanced a few years at this point. Now, they're in 1772. I think if they're 200 years ahead, we were like 1963 or 4 when came back, when Bree first came back. So they've been there. I don't know. I could be wrong. Actually, I do think I am wrong. In any case, 5 years, I'd say, give or take, at least at this point, they've been there. So enough time has passed, you know, within this season alone for us to really feel like we've seen a lot, not just including the previous seasons. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also for Ulysses to be able to get away, I thought was really nice, and a nice, you know, a reminder that the British did end slavery like a lot sooner than the Americans. Anyway, but with that said, let's go on to Ian. So Ian finally gives us like a little bit more information about what his time was with the Native Americans, and that he did have a wife, and now she is lost to him. And that's all we kind of really got. And now he also discovers that pretty much half his family are time travelers. So how do we feel about that? Rachel, let's start with you.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you a lot better now. Yeah,
turned out a little bit, but yeah.
I just adjusted my headset. Okay, so with Ian, I loved that he found out, especially now that we no longer have Murtaugh. We needed that extra family member to know. And the fact that Ian would so readily believe it, I'm not surprised. This is a guy who's been through a lot, so I could absolutely see him believing it. And I loved the line about him saying, "Well, I knew you weren't a fairy, Auntie." I loved it.
Yeah, so I'm glad they told Ian. I don't know, for some reason I thought he already knew, because it's like, duh. They've been doing so many things, you know, that went unexplained, and I'm surprised that they haven't explained it sooner. So that part didn't really connect for me, because I'm just like, why wouldn't they tell Ian? Ian's been down since day one.
Yeah.
Him and the dog. So that's what I'm like, okay, well, you're just now finding out on their way out. So I was a little disappointed at the timing of it all, you know?
That makes sense. Lee?
Well, my take is that Ian he has an adventurous spirit, And some people, just can believe without seeing certain things, and they embrace situations that seem impossible to others. And my heart was breaking a bit that he really wanted to join them on their journey, and he doesn't appear to have the ability to go through the stones because the rock wasn't hot. He can't hear the wind, and all the requirements to be able to time travel. So I think he took it, pretty hard that he wasn't able to join them. But I think that, he's probably is needed where he is now to look after the family. And I think that was probably a good decision so that, Jaimie and Claire can, continue the relationship with Ian. Watch over each other.
Yeah.
Right, because Jaimie needs a road dog. Murtaugh's gone, so Ian came at the perfect time.
Yeah. Yeah, and also with Roger and Bree leaving, having that additional family member that will certainly help them in the long run. I thought it was nice that they finally told him. I felt like it was time that he knew. And I mean, how do you hide the fact that everyone thinks that the stone's really hot, and then it gets so hot that it splits into like 3 pieces, and just be like, oh, it was nothing, don't worry about it. So for them to finally be able to admit it. And we also got a few more hints as to, I didn't know that, maybe I'm the only person who didn't know this, but that the gemstones heated up when they touched them. Did we know this? This was a new thing, right?
That. It was new information to me. And also, I'm glad they brought up Otter Tooth. I forgot about him.
Yeah. So we have Otter Tooth, which I think might tie into something else later in the season or season 6. So that'll be curious to see how that goes. Rachel's smiling.
I will try not to say anything.
Wink, wink, you guys. Google. Anyways,
read the books too.
It was nice to kind of have that kind of tied up, and which leads us to, I feel like we're flying through. So before I say this, guys, thank you so much for making us ESPN of TV Talk. As always, please rate, subscribe, iTunes, YouTube, hit us up on Twitter. I know you're just sitting at home right now. What else are you doing right now? Maybe doing the dishes, maybe cooking a nice home cooked meal, maybe ordering from your favorite local place. Yes, I'm plugging that too. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you for the last episode next week. Okay, so Bree and Roger, Jimmy can hear the stones. They know or hear the buzzing, and heats up the stone. They know now that he can travel, so they're out. They're like, we got to go. How do we feel about this? How do we feel about peanut butter and jelly being invented about 100 years too early? Thoughts?
Okay, so my first thing, and I'm only going to say one thing about the book, is that and I'll say the rest later, but like the thing that bothers me is knowing that in the book, Roger actually says he's going to stay instead. And so for them to quickly decide at the end of book 6, the end of book 5, not book 6. Book 6 is a little bit different, but book 5, that's there before they actually end up leaving and going back. Roger decides to stay. And so I feel like it was a missed opportunity. And so for me, I was kind of like, okay, well, they're going to just say that they're going to leave so fast. And it felt very rushed. Like we didn't get enough. We got this whole season with them in the past, but I wanted more time with them in the past. And I was really sad to see them go. And that's probably just a viewer / that's probably just a viewer comment more than, criticism. But I was really sad to see them make that decision so quickly and go.
I was surprised that Roger actually was ready to go at that time. I felt like he finally got this bond with Jaimie, and it was just upsetting to see it a disconnect so soon. And I thought it was Roger kind of won me over a little bit. Finally, this episode, he empathized with the Dutch family that they found that was burned, and the little girl, instead of putting that on Jaimie to deal with, he was like, I got this, and he was able to put her out of her misery himself. So it took a lot of bravery, because I didn't see Roger having that type of those guts in the stomach for that.
Yeah.
Roger has always been one of my favorite characters in the series. He just has this sense of compassion and depth. Every time I look into his eyes, I see something deeper, like mystery and just a lot of unexplored emotions. So I don't think I was very surprised when I saw him put that young girl out of her misery. I think that's just in his nature. He doesn't like to see people hurt or suffer. And that was really touching for me. That was a great scene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was great to kind of see like him come full circle, because I think that's not something that would have been, I mean, it's never easy, but I don't think that's something that would have been as easy for the Roger that just went through the stones. I think that would have been a little bit hard to observe, and even just the burning. It's just a lot. So they've all grown a lot for sure. And I thought it was a good choice to send them back or send them somewhere, because we don't actually know where they went. Like, it doesn't sound like they went to where they thought they were going to go. What were you going to say?
I'm following the chat. There's a huge conversation about it going on. I just want to give a shout out to Amy A. She says, well, yeah, because the stones don't displace location, just time. So everyone's talking about they don't know where they are. Eric Jackson is remarking about the burnt girl from earlier. And then let me just see. Yeah. So a lot of people talking about where they could be, or sorry, when they could be. Yeah.
It could be anywhere.
Or who they saw, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I would love it if they were in 2020. But
that would be awesome.
That would be ridiculous. And
they would have to wear masks, though.
They would. It'd be way too much sci-fi.
Love it.
They wouldn't have enough vaccines. It'd be a whole deal. But yeah, way too much so on the sci-fi side. So I understand them not sending them to us. But it was nice to kind of just have them move that forward. I have complained about this season moving a little too fast in certain points and too slow in certain others, but I think them sticking true to their word and saying the moment we know that Jimmy can hear, we're going back, was nice, because it's not like it's going to get any better. I mean, they're struggling to find needles. They're struggling to make penicillin. Like, and the mortality rate for children at that time, it doesn't fare well for Jimmy. So bringing them back to the future, I love whenever I get the chance to say that, is the best choice. There's I did want to comment before just my final thoughts on Bree and Roger. It was nice to see the cat. I'm always happy when the cat makes an appearance in the background. And it was nice to have that moment between Jaimie and Bree as well, where he tells her about the son, and he tells her in like the most polite way how the son was conceived, because we do know that he did say it was her choice, but it wasn't necessarily Jamie's choice, and they kind of have been really delicate with that and stayed delicate with it even in this episode. So any other thoughts on them before we move on?
No, I'm ready to get to this steamy hot sex scene.
All right, so let's move on to Claire and Jaimie. So we have a few things going on with them. We have the return of Lionel, of Mr. Brown, with the Committee of Safety. Now that houses are being burned down, conveniently in need of a Committee of Safety. I'm just saying, it's suspect. Now you got a Committee of Safety. Who's starting the fires? Anyways, and then we have the sex scene, which my notes were oral sex, huzzah. And then huzzah! Awesome. And what if she fell, though? I was very concerned she was going to fall out the window. Anyways.
I thought so too. But I was also trying to figure out how he even went down there when she had a sweatbox.
Can I just say that the same scene happens in the book, and she actually talks about what's in her perfume.
Oh, really?
Orange flowers, jasmine, vanilla beans, and cinnamon. Well, I guess that does the trick.
Cinnamon ruins it. Cinnamon's way too strong. As somebody who's been making soaps and candles all week, I can tell you that cinnamon is the ruiner of a delicate balance. I'm just saying.
Right. But I guess that's why he fell asleep.
Yeah. It'll wake you up because it's stinky. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, it was kind of a hint though. I was like, oh, something's gonna go wrong because they haven't really given us a steamy sex scene. Oh
Since
gosh,
the
since
horse
probably
stables?
since when?
The horse stables? No. Since he came back from the dead.
Yeah, I mean, it's been at least a few episodes. I don't know. I feel like I haven't seen it since earlier in the season, but time is weird and irrelevant in quarantine. In any case, it was nice to see, but it also kind of clued me into this feeling of dread that something bad was about to happen. How do we feel about that? Just Claire and Jaimie overall, just whatever you want. Angel?
I still haven't got my answer. How do you do that when it's a sweatbox? Okay. I think that they are. How much older is Claire than Jaimie? Because I see her with a hair full of grays, and he's not graying. I'm trying to
he's going gray, but he's also redhead, so gray's going to look a little different on him. And then she's about like almost a decade older than him.
Okay.
Maybe like 8 years or so. Is that right?
I thought that when she meets him originally, she's 26 and he's 23. Originally when they meet. Yeah. So I think it's only a 3-year.
Don't make us go back to season 1.
I don't know, right? I mean, it could be. I thought she was like 26 and he was 20, but or 28, 26. I don't know. They were both in their 30s when they were cast. So my brain was like, I don't know what's happening. But she's also just probably somebody who they're playing it as if she goes gray early. I know a lot of women who go gray in their 20s and diet until
every
diet. Yeah.
Diet.
So
no, but I love their sexual dynamics and their intimacy, like the way they have this inner dialogue without actually talking. They have like a lot of body language between them. And that's very sensual in and of itself. And they just kind of speak their own language. Like I can't see Jaimie being with anyone else. I can't see Claire being with anyone else. They mesh really well as characters.
We're getting confirmation in the chat that he was 22, about to be 23 when they met, and she was 27.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, 5-year difference.
Yeah.
She always just you know what? I think maybe in real life they're like 6 years apart. I could be wrong. I just remember thinking in my head, oh, she's a lot older than him. But
I think they changed it slightly in the show too versus the book. We're getting some differences in the chat. I think that's why. I think in the book there's a bit more of a gap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In any case, she's a little bit older and she's probably just prematurely gray. But they're both well into their 50s at this point. I think they're supposed to be. Or
is he?
Yeah.
Or about
Okay.
Or early 50s. He just turned 50 and she's like probably 50. If that's the case, then she's like 54. So with that said, let's just like dig a little bit deeper. We did talk a little bit about the sex scene and that was all fine and dandy, but the real thing is the reintroduction of Lionel and his brother and the chaos they're about to cause the Fraser family. How do we feel about them coming in and blowing up stills and kidnapping Claire? Like, you know, Lionel beating his wife, discovering she's Dr. Rowland.
Right. True to form. I mean, you know, broken wrist. Of course, we all knew where that was going. When Claire was describing how you get a broken wrist, and there's usually just 2 ways. You fall or somebody breaks it. So not surprising. He seems, I mean, he's kind of a, you know, a difficult character, an angry character, and he plays his part really well. And I'm not surprised at the, you know, the kidnapping and the violence. It just seems to all be leading up to, you know, another situation. But then I remember, let's see, what was, I had a thought. What was really good too. I'll come back to it.
No
But
worries.
yeah, it'll come back to me and I'll jump in. But go anyway. I wasn't surprised at what happened to his wife because he's just a very angry individual.
Mm.
What I loved is that we saw Claire the doctor in that episode, in that moment, I should say. I love, like, I could, even though we saw her in the 1700s, I was almost seeing her in a doctor's uniform, helping one of her patients in the present. Just the way that the professional demeanor that she had, and just the way that she was
Yes.
talking to her, and the way that she knew to ask Lionel to leave so that she
Yeah.
could kind of, without directly, she didn't directly accuse anyone of anything because that's the professional way to handle this.
Mhm.
She just kind of hinted at it and like tried to get it out of his wife what really happened.
Mhm.
And to me, it was one, crazy that I appreciated how Claire did this, one, but two, also the way that it was back then for women and the time period, and how
Yes.
this woman kept saying, well, hey, like, I deserved it. I wasn't doing the chores right, blah, 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 blah. Like, so I was like, okay, like, yes, like she was very much a woman who believed that she kind of deserved this, but also she didn't even care what her husband did to her. She was more concerned if she had a child
Yeah.
and that he did this to the child.
Yeah.
True to
Yeah.
form back to those days,
What do you
right?
guys?
So,
Oh, sorry.
No,
Go
not at
ahead,
all.
Lee.
No, I'm just, it's true to form. It's the way women were conditioned to think.
Mhm.
They were basically there to bear children, to do the chores, to cook. And so she felt like she wasn't living up to his expectations. And of course, in her mind, she felt like she deserved what had happened. And Claire was very nuanced. I agree with Rachel. I love the way she handled the situation where she had him leave to go get, the liquor. And I think he knew down deep inside what she was doing, but he really didn't have an option not to go and
Mhm.
gather the liquor. But I think the whole scene where Claire is being kidnapped and the violence occurs, I think it's retribution for Jaimie not wanting to join the committee in some form or
Mm.
fashion.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did feel like this overcast of a threat. Even when he introduced the idea, like, I scratched your bag, it's time for you to scratch mine.
Mhm.
And Lionel kind of hinted at it when he came back to Jaimie with the answer, and Jaimie said no. He was like, "Are you sure? Because
Mhm.
oh, we got this heat." So I already knew that was going to happen. When he saw her, Dr. Rawlings, what was that, a binder or journal? I was a little scared about that. What was that?
My guess is that it was some kind of printing press. I don't know. I could be wrong. That was where my head went, though.
I think it looked like the stamp to sign it at
Mm.
the end. To
Gotcha.
say that doctor, and probably the binder where she keeps the flyers.
Yeah, that's kind of a foreshadowing to some type of, I don't know, exploiting the situation, or like, I don't know what type of punishment they could give her for being Dr. Rawlings. Like, what is that about?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's so much that they could punish it because and that kind of goes into what I was thinking about, what their motivation was for taking her in the first place. Like, are they upset because she's corrupted all their women with thoughts of safe sex? And it's interesting because I know in the books there's a slightly different motivation for them taking her, and they haven't really addressed that motivation so far in the show, which leads me to believe that won't be the same motivation in the show. But I don't know. Sorry, I'm folding up my paper. So if you hear that, that's what that is. I'll stop. I'm not quite sure if it's really a punishable thing. Like I don't know. They couldn't necessarily call her a witch. It wasn't something that was meant to be spread past her community, and then it was, and so it wasn't intentional. So I don't know how they would go about even condemning her for just releasing information. I'm sure they can. There's certainly a history in America of people doing that, but I'm not sure what Lionel will get out of doing that. And I'm still not sure of their reasoning for taking them or for blowing up the still, if it's just not, you're not a part of our community of safety, so you're against us, which feels incredibly dumb. And I hope that's not the motivation the show goes with. So Rachel, what were you were kind of nodding. What were some of your thoughts on it?
So I have some things to say when we get to page to screen too, because a lot of this was changed. And like, I think for me, my perspective is different because I know how it's different and why they really take her in the books and how it's slightly kind of off, or not off, but just changed. And, but seeing it happen this way, I just felt like, I don't mind they did a cliffhanger because this is episode 11 and we're going to get one more episode. But sometimes it just kind of bothers me that we get this major cliffhanger, especially because we only have one more episode left. If I can't see them resolving this in one episode.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. Right.
Yeah, now I know that Outlander's already confirmed for season 6, so we'll definitely get it at some point, but I don't want to have to wait.
Yeah.
So just from that alone, and also the Rawlings thing, I have a feeling that, all along the Browns have been very antagonistic toward her and what she can do medically. They've just historically been against each other in terms of what they believe in. And so I do see them taking her for this reason, especially with what Lionel's wife said about knowing that if she, like Dr. Rawlings said, if you sleep with a man at a certain time, you won't become with child. So I feel like, Lionel and the rest of the men are probably getting very pissed off at, Dr. Rawlings feeding information they don't want their wives to have.
Yeah. If their wives can read, for sure.
Yeah.
You know what will be really messed up? It would be really messed up if the last episode they focused on one storyline and don't really shine a light on the other. And
yeah, well, that's what they do. That's totally going to do that.
Right?
oh my gosh.
It leaves room for other storylines later, if you just leave something open, obviously. But I think that's a direction it feels like it's going, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see how the final episode of season 5 goes down. It's just going off the trailer alone. It seems like it's definitely going to be a Claire and Jaimie focused episode with a lot of violence and trauma, but that's also Outlander.
I also feel like, in a way, this is a callback to me to season 1, where we had Jaimie going off and trying to grab Claire from Jack Randall. So I'm like, okay, we've kind of done this plot point before, except, much different circumstances. There are different people now, not different people per se, but like they've grown as people, I should say. But yeah, I'm just like, okay, now right after Claire tells Jaimie that it feels like they're back to just being alone again, we get a callback to another plot point that already has kind of happened, which is fine, but I just found it very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's okay. And I know people are going to be like, what? But I think sometimes it's okay to just let people live. Give us like 2 or 3 episodes of them living, dealing with like a squirrel infestation. I'm cool with that. Same thing with like Riverdale. For the longest, it was like, just give me a regular high school plot point so I can take a moment to breathe. And that's something that I hope eventually, we will just have like a bottle episode on Outlander. I would kill for that. Just them in the cabin reminiscing or some crap. That'd be nice. All right. Any other final thoughts before we get to page to screen? All right. Well, Rachel, take it away.
Cool. Okay. There's a lot. Where do I start? I think I'm going to start with everything with Brianna and Roger leaving. First of all, in the book, they don't leave until 1776. Obviously, in the show, we see that it was autumn of 1772. What happened was in book 5, in the Fiery Cross, it ends with them discovering, with the scene with young Ian, where young Ian does come back, but he comes back much later in book 5 than what we saw in season 5. there is the whole scene with the opal. The way that it's described in the book, it explodes. We still get it in pieces, but like there's more of an explosion, like pieces, fragments go everywhere. It was very, very descriptive in terms of what we saw with that. But they do discover that Jemmy has the gift of travel because he can feel the heat and he hears the buzzing, and like so they know that he can travel. The major difference, as I mentioned earlier, though, is that at the end of book 5, Roger actually says to Jaimie, he calls back to the beginning of book 5 of the Fiery Cross, where basically Jaimie called everyone to arms and called everyone to join him. And the moment when Jaimie says that Jaimie had said to Roger, called him a son of his house. And so Roger references that and says, no, you said I was a son of your house. I'm here to stay. And so the end of book 5 is basically Roger saying, it was really up to Roger to make the decision, I guess, the way that they have it written. And Roger says, no, I want to stay, when all along he had been talking about with Brianna leaving. So I loved that because it showed so much with Roger. The connection he has with Jaimie, I think, is stronger in the book. The other thing, this is like a really tiny thing, Lizzie's marriage. She's betrothed to a man named Manfred. I'm just going to leave it there. I don't know what we're getting, so I don't want to ruin anything. But when we get to book 6, A Breath of Snow and Ashes, that's when Brianna and Roger end up deciding that they're going to leave, like actually going to go. And one thing they didn't do is that Jaimie gives Claire a gem and basically asks her to go too. And then she says no, like she would never do that. And so the only other thing I'll mention is that Claire getting kidnapped is also not from book 5. Yeah. That happens in A Breath of Snow and Ashes. I don't want to say too much because I'm not sure what they're going to do and I don't want to ruin it. I'll wait till season 6 or maybe next episode if we get there. If that's what it does, if that's where we end up. But I'll save some of that. And yeah, the only other thing is that I just don't want to mention, they do find the letter from Otter Tooth, and there's a name listed and an organization listed that I also don't want to say, just in case that's where they're going with season 6. But essentially, if you would like to know some extra hints about that letter and more about who might be involved, the end of book 5 is a good place to start.
Yeah. There was a small hint in the episode, I think, but it kind of, you have to, I think that's for book readers to know if you heard it. In any case, I think that wraps up that part of the show. Let's thank you so much, Rachel, for all your information. And let's go into the last round of predictions for season 5.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
See? Finally learned to wait for it.
Wait for it.
All right. Lee, let's start with you.
Predictions. Well, let's see. I predict that the kidnapping is predicated by the Committee of Safety. And I mentioned it earlier. I feel that it's retribution because Jaimie refused to join. And I think that he's going to have to make some difficult choices in order to get Claire back. My second prediction is that the place where the trio, Jimmy and Roger and Bree, ended up is going to be, I believe, not in the future, but in the past. Before the 1700s.
Oh, okay.
Anja?
I don't know what to think about. I think who they saw versus the location, I think that's gonna play in, or possibly what they saw, who or what, not where. As far as Bree and Roger goes, because Jimmy takes straight off towards someone or something that excited him. So that's what my indicator was. Also, I feel like possibly this may be where Claire and Jaimie die. No, just kidding. In a burn. So I don't know, because I'm trying to see how they're gonna close out season 6. So maybe not die yet, but I don't know. It's just all too up in the air and too brand new. Like this new group is just like, can we not have a villain for like 5 seconds?
Yeah. Rachel?
I am okay. So, and I just want to read a comment from the chat too. Amy A. Prediction: Roger and Bree are in 2020, and we have totally strayed from the books. I would love that to happen. I would want, yeah. I want them to be in the future. I want them to be in a time that it would just be amazing, or even not 2020, maybe just a different time than what they're expecting.
Mhm.
The other thing is that I'm thinking that for this last episode, I don't think they're gonna leave us on a major cliffhanger. They usually don't. Usually it's a tiny one that won't leave us. I mean, sometimes it's not, but I think that they're gonna resolve this kidnapping, and it's going to be something where I think that Jaimie's gonna get her back before something very bad happens, and that she's going to be okay, and that they're going to end it there. But then I think they're going to end it with more of the hints of the war to come and Jaimie's involvement, and the fact that he basically made a bold statement by saying he wasn't helping the Browns, and how that's going to impact them for season 6 and where they want to live.
I think I definitely think that Bree and Roger are not where they thought they were going. They could be, even further back in time. Like Lee said, I think that's a possibility. Because they did mention Otter Tooth being not where he thought, or actually that he was too late. So maybe they're too soon, or maybe, I don't know, maybe they've gone past into the 80s.